This game was played by two chess players who are becoming quite good. When I analyze a chess game, I like to put the top three moves at the bottom, and these two chess players ended up getting a top three move most of the time during this game, so they're well on their way to becoming great chess players. Now right here is a little feature I like to call the traffic light. When a move is good, the light is green. When a move is kind of so-so, a little bit dangerous, it turns yellow. And when the move's not very good at all, the light turns red. And again, these two players did top three moves most of the time, but every once in a while they hit a red light move. And that's what we're going to look at in this video. The first few moves are as follows, and I'm going to go through these kind of fast. So if you want to go back and look at this at a slower speed or at another time to kind of see how the moves develop, that's fine. But it's here, the sixth move for black, that I would like to look at. I'm going to flip the board so we can see this position from black's perspective. And here you'll notice that white just put a tempo on the black knight. And the move before that, black put a tempo on the white knight. So according to the analysis, the best move for black would be the black pawn taking the white knight, and then the white pawn would take the black knight. And eventually each side would end up taking the other piece, and then it would be an even trade, 4 points to 4 points. Instead, black chose to retreat the knight back to the square on g8. And if you see, white is now basically 1 point ahead of black. And the reason why that is black, by putting the knight back to its original square, basically it's like that move had never taken place in the entire game. It's like giving white a free move. And so white's development is a lot better, and black's development isn't nearly as good because now there's more pieces on the back row that need to be moved out. And the black knight is being hemmed in by white's pawn. Moving on from this position, we're going to move 11 by white. And again, we're going to move through these pretty fast. But if you wanted to take the time and slow down the video to see how the moves match with the board moves, that's fine. Now I'm going to flip the board from white's perspective because this is the move that white made that wasn't quite so good. And you can see, if you look at the analysis, 0.04. So the game is basically about even. But what white does is white takes the pawn and attacks the black queen. The problem with that move is that there is an undefended piece right here that black is going to take advantage of. In fact, that's what black does, is black goes ahead and grabs that piece, and you can see by looking at the analysis that black is now ahead by 1 point. Since I'm not a great chess player, I don't quite understand the moves here. But you can see from the analysis that moving the pawn to d3 was the best move for white. And the reason why is that it opens up this attack on the black queen. The black queen can still take the pawn on g2, but for some reason, if you look at the analysis, 0.06, the game is still about even. White would move the bishop to f3, and then the black queen would have to retreat. And even though, regardless of the move, black's still ahead by a pawn, this is just a much better position for white to be in. So going back to our position after move 11, we are now going to move up to move number 14 for white. And this one was a biggie. After analyzing this move, I'm not really sure what the problem is. I'm assuming it's just a positional thing. One thing I would like to point out, though, from white's side, is that white hasn't developed any of these 4 pawns. The rook is hemmed in, and the bishop is hemmed in, And basically the queen is kind of hemmed in right here. So there's a lot of weakness over here on the queen side. What white does is white takes the knight and moves it to h5. The number one move was moving queen to e2. But then if you look at move number 3 and move number 4, it's starting to move these pawns out of the way, the b pawn and the d pawn, in an effort to try to get some of these other pieces out of the back row. So make sure that when you're playing, you don't cramp your position and prevent yourself from being able to develop your pieces into the game. We will now move on to move 16 for white. I told you the last move was the biggie. That wasn't the biggie. This move was the biggie. And right here you can see that black is ahead by between a half point to a point, so the game is very close, but white castles. And look at the score, -4.36. So there's a lot of things going on right now that black could take advantage of. The reason why this is such a dangerous move for white is, well, white castles, but the purpose of a castle is to protect the king. But by castling, there is absolutely no protection in this area. The pawns are staggered everywhere. There's no pawn at all on the G file. Black has a queen that's in ready for an attack, bishop that's not too far away from attack. The king really is not safe in this position. And so you've got to make sure that when you're playing chess, you really focus on king safety in the game. And again, right here, white just castled in a place where it was even less safe than it was before. And now we're going to flip the board from here, because the next two moves from black affected the outcome of the game. As you can see, black is ahead now by 5 points, the equivalent of a minor piece and 2 pawns. So there's a lot of things going on in this position. This is considered a critical point in the game, and it's the point where black could have blown the game wide open and won easily. Black started off pretty good. Black noticed that there was an X-ray attack from the bishop to the king, so black moved the pawn and put the king in check, which was an excellent move. One of the only things white could do, and it was the best move for white, was to move the king out of the way. And here's the critical spot of the game. We have been talking a lot about undefended pieces. And if you look at white's position, it looks like all of the pieces are pretty well protected. About the only piece that I see that's unprotected is this pawn that's right here. But believe it or not, there actually is another undefended piece, and it's kind of a tricky one to spot. It's actually this knight right here. And you may think, well, the knight's being protected by this pawn, but actually it's not, because the pawn is being pinned to the king by the queen. And so the secret to the best move for black lies in that move. And what it is for black is moving the rook to g8. Because here at g8, the rook is attacking the knight, and it is not being protected. So if we move it right there, you can see that now that piece is going to go unless if white protects it. And if you look at the analysis, if white doesn't play the right move, then black's going to be even further ahead. So what white needs to do is to protect that knight with a queen, but then black has another trick up the sleeve. It's not really a trick, it's just a great move. And that's moving the bishop to h3. And here, black's bishop is attacking the rook, and if those two pieces get traded, it's 5 points for 3. But really, it's not even that easy. Because let's say that the black bishop does take, well, let me double check my things here. And something else that I've noticed is the rook is trapped. Because if the rook, the only two moves that the rook has is to move to this square on G1 or to move to this square on F2, but the black bishop is covering those two squares. So that rook is going to fall. Black has to be very careful in this position, because if you look where the black king is and where the black queen is, they are in a position where they can get forked. So if the white queen or the white knight were to move here, it would be able to fork both the king and the queen at the same time. And with the king being in check, the king would have to move out of the way and the rook would be able to take the queen. The only thing that's preventing white from doing that is this knight here on h6, which is attacking the f5 square. So black has to be very careful and make sure that that knight either protects that square or that the queen moves out of the way so that it doesn't get forked. On the next move, white moves the bishop to g4. And as you can see, black went from being ahead by almost 6 points to having a fairly even game. Now, white takes the bishop, which is why, because black can't retake the bishop, or black can't retake the bishop, because if it does, then those two pieces are going to be forked. And unfortunately, that's what ended up happening in the game. And after the queen was taken in the game, then black just didn't have enough material to catch up. And eventually the game ended, but again, both sides played very well, and even up until the end, they were basically doing top 3 moves.